During certain types of emergencies, sometimes the best course of action is to stay put for a while. On this episode of Tactical Tidbits, I'll give you the basics of bugging in. Hey guys, I'm Herman Morris from Alpha One Tactical here. Please help me help others by liking and sharing this video wherever you're watching it. So, as I'm recording this, we're going through the coronavirus pandemic, and there are a ton of lessons to be learned from, everything that's been happening so far. However, I want these episodes to be evergreen, so everything I'm going to share with you today will be generalized, and it can apply to this and many other types of emergencies in which it's better to bug in than to bug out. Now, in some cases, bugging out might not be an option due to government mandates, or it might just be outright unsafe. So, during what kinds of emergencies might you want to or have to bug in? Well, as we're experiencing right now, a pandemic. Or there might be, also scenarios that due to inclement weather, one has to stay home for several days or maybe even weeks. Or, there might be civil unrest for some reason or another, and, many other such types of scenarios. But note that in the case of some natural disasters in which your home could be destroyed or badly damaged, like, an earthquake or a tornado, hurricane, etc., some of the concepts that we'll discuss here will not apply, and you should plan accordingly for those if that's a threat for you. And as per usual, I would like to work big to small in my approach. In other words, the things that will yield you the best results in the most areas. Now, this is perfectly in line with our pyramid of needs of personal safety that I've discussed in the past. So, as you can probably suspect, I'll start with addressing mindset first. All right. In an emergency, the most important thing is to keep your cool. You need a level head. You need to maintain your composure. Giving into fear and panic can be your worst enemy and could end up being even worse than whatever the perceived threat is. I recommend that you watch my video on fear and fear management to get, a little bit more details on this and you understand what I'm talking about. And the biggest reason why people freak out when it's time to bug in is because of a failure to prepare ahead of time. And then they face the reality that they now have to compete with everybody else for the same resources in the last minute. So if you find yourself fighting over toilet paper or raiding the entire aisle of canned soups, you're already behind the power curve. Now, as you'll see, if you prepare accordingly, these types of events will not take nearly as much of a psychological and emotional toll on what is already, a challenging situation to begin with. So, if we have the correct mindset, we can now move on with our strategy. And here, we can't move further if we don't address the financial component. None of the food and water preps will do you any good if after a few weeks of bugging in, you're left without a cent in the bank and out on the street, living in the street. So part of emergency preparation includes financial stability. A good rule of thumb is to have at least 3 months worth of expenses saved up. And I'm only referring to essentials here, like rent or mortgage, your utilities, etc. And not your memberships to the gym or Netflix. Just the things that will keep you in your house with the lights on and the water flowing. Make sense? Now, it's also a good idea that you have some cash at your disposal, as it could be a while before you can get to a bank. I would aim to have at least $1,000 in cash that you can keep, in your safe at home. And now, something else that you might want in your safe are precious metals like gold and silver. And this helps as a hedge against inflation for the money that you save, that you put away, as well as a possibility for the need to barter if that comes along. And then it's up to you to figure out, how much you want to invest in that. Okay, so once you're set up to be able to get through a period of at least 3 months financially, we can start looking at the essentials to staying comfortable during this period of bugging in. I break it out into two time frames, near term and midterm. Near term refers to a period of 2 to 3 weeks. In this case, we're under the assumption that all essential services are still operational, namely water and electricity. That being the case, water is not, that much of a concern since we can simply open the tap. The focus here is on food and everything else that you need to run your home, normally, such as toilet paper, paper towels, cleaner, disinfectant, etc. The good news is that with proper preparation, this does not have to be an onerous task. I recommend a 3-week cycle. That means always having enough supplies for you and your family for 3 weeks. If you do it as a cycle, you will only need to do a large purchase once. Simply buy 3 times of what you normally consume in a week. All the perishables for the second and third weeks you put in the freezer. By the way, this is why everyone should have, at least 2 refrigerators or 2 freezers. And so by the end of the first week, you can start thawing the perishables for the second week and then go shopping only to replace the third week's worth of food and supplies. The key during this period is to maximize comfort and familiarity. You will be consuming the same things you normally like, including fruits, vegetables, bread, etc. So your main challenge will be how to pass the time and not pull your hair out, as most of us are doing right now. Okay? But if you're financially stable and you have all that stuff, you're going to be good. All right? Now, moving on to midterm planning. Midterm is 1 to 3 months of preparation. So as you can expect, before the first month is up, we will already have gone through most of our food and supplies from our near-term planning, especially the perishables. In order to prepare for this period, we need to accumulate food that can last at least that long, namely canned foods, dried foods, powdered foods, pickled foods, MREs, camping style, dried foods, etc. Just like you did with the near term, you can cycle through those foods every 3 months or so. Now, it's not an absolute must, as those foods usually have very long shelf lives, but in many cases, the issue is how they are stored and the packaging being damaged, so your mileage may vary. Now, in the midterm, what water might actually become an issue. If we're getting close to 3 months of not being able to go out, things would probably need to be pretty bad. At that point, it's very possible that utilities would start to falter. That's why it's important to have enough candles, rechargeable batteries, a portable solar panel to charge them, maybe even a generator, but remember that also means requiring to have enough fuel for it. But the most important factor would be clean, potable water. Having cases of bottled or canned water stored, that does help, but that can get pretty pricey, and storing them is sometimes an issue given just how much space they take up. So I recommend looking into things like water storage systems or even water catchment systems depending on your needs and where you are. I mean, if I had to, I could even use my pool as a source of water if maintained and treated accordingly. I mean, it's 15,000 gallons of water just sitting there that I can use. So anyway, the focus in the midterm is survival, security, and morale. Obviously, at that point, we would no longer be leading a life that resembles the one prior to the emergency. We would be eating food that we might not enjoy, might not even be the healthiest in the world. We will have forgone all the creature comforts that modern civilization has to offer. So what one has to focus on here, or in those circumstances, is to keep going and maintaining a positive spirit to get you and your loved ones through until the danger subsides. That means probably going to have to find some analog versions of the things that used to entertain us, such as board games instead of videos, movies and video games and things like that. And it's important that everybody has a role and has tasks to stay busy while also improving the circumstances for the rest of the group. Now, I also mentioned that security is one of those keys during this period. It always is. Even in the near term, this might be a focus depending on the situation and where you live, but this is a topic all its own. Similarly, prepping for an extended period of time, 3+ months, is also outside of the scope of this episode. If everything is still that bad for more than 3 months, it would probably be best to bug out, especially if you're in an urban or suburban setting. Now, if you're already in the country, then at that point you should already be growing and hunting for your own food, catching water and all that fun stuff. So in this episode, I just wanted to address the things that apply to the vast majority of people in the most realistic scenarios. Now, you can bet that now the politicians have seen how much flack they can take for, not doing much or doing too much in response to a perceived threat. And then on top of that, the media capitalizing on both sides of those criticisms. I think we'll be seeing a lot more of these events in the future. Calls to self-quarantine, closing down towns, countries, maybe even martial law. So this time around, it's a freebie. On the next one, there will be no excuse for not being prepared. Okay? So stay safe out there, stay positive, and I'll see you next time.